Let me describe two people to you, and tell me which one sounds smarter. Person A follows all the traditional financial advice. They've saved 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund, sitting in a savings account earning 4% interest. They feel responsible, secure, prepared for anything. They've got $18,000 in cash. They sleep well at night, knowing they're protected. They did everything right. Person B ignored that advice. They only kept 1 month of expenses in savings, just $3,000. They took the other $15,000 and invested it in index funds. They're earning 10% average returns instead of 4. Over 20 years, Person A's $18,000 emergency fund becomes $39,000. Person B's $15,000 investment becomes $101,000. Plus, they still have their $3,000 emergency fund. Person B ends up with $104,000. Person A has $39,000. That's $65,000 more wealth. Same starting money, completely different outcomes. The difference isn't that Person B took crazy risks. It's that they understood something Person A didn't. The 6-month emergency fund rule is keeping you poor. If you've been told to save 6 months of expenses before investing anything, if you've got tens of thousands sitting in a savings account earning almost nothing, if you've been delaying wealth building to build a massive emergency fund first, this video is going to change everything. My name is John, and I've spent years analyzing emergency fund strategies, and the data is clear. The traditional 6-month rule costs you hundreds of thousands in lost investment growth. If this makes you uncomfortable, hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to show you could add over $200,000 to your net worth. Here's what everyone gets wrong about emergency funds. The advice sounds so reasonable. Save 6 months of expenses so if you lose your job, you can survive without going into debt. Makes perfect sense, except it ignores basic math. Money sitting in savings earning 4% is losing value after inflation. Money invested in stocks earning 10% is building wealth. The difference between 4% and 10% compounded over decades is life-changing. Let me show you the real cost. The average American household needs about $4,000 per month to cover basic expenses. 6 months is $24,000. That's a massive amount of money sitting idle, earning minimal interest. Let's say you're 30 years old and you spend 3 years building that $24,000 emergency fund before you start investing. You're being responsible, following the rules, but those 3 years cost you everything. If you had taken that $24,000 and invested it at age 27 instead of holding it in cash until 30, here's what happens. By retirement at 65, that $24,000 becomes $527,000 at 10% returns. But because you waited 3 years, that same $24,000 only becomes $398,000. You lost $129,000 in retirement wealth by being responsible and following the 6-month rule. Let that sink in. Following traditional advice cost you $129,000. But it gets worse because most people never actually need 6 months of expenses saved. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the average unemployment duration is about 20 weeks. That's 5 months. And most people find a new job before fully depleting savings because they panic and take anything available after 3 months. You're saving for a worst-case scenario that almost never happens. Meanwhile, that money could be growing in the market, building real wealth instead of sitting idle. Here's what actually works. I call it the 3-tier emergency strategy. Tier 1 is your immediate access fund. Keep 1 month of expenses in a high-yield savings account. For most people, that's $3,000 to $5,000. This covers unexpected car repairs, medical co-pays, minor emergencies. You can access it instantly without selling investments. This is your true emergency fund. Tier 2 is your credit buffer. Have a credit card with a limit equal to at least 2 months of expenses that you never carry a balance on. This is not for regular spending. This is emergency access to capital if something happens before you can liquidate investments. Medical emergency? Put it on the card. Job loss? You have 30 days before the bill is due to figure out your plan. This buys you time without keeping tens of thousands in cash. Tier 3 is your invested safety net. Everything beyond that first month of expenses goes into a taxable brokerage account invested in index funds. If you have a true extended emergency that exhausts Tier 1 and Tier 2, you can sell investments. Yes, you might have to sell at a loss if the market is down, but statistically, the market is up 75% of the time. And even if you do sell at a 20% loss during a crash, you're still better off than leaving all that money in savings earning nothing for decades. Let me run the numbers on this three-tier system versus the traditional 6-month fund. You need $4,000 per month in expenses. Traditional advice says save $24,000 in cash. The three-tier system says keep $4,000 in savings, have an $8,000 credit line available, and invest the other $20,000. Over 30 years, your $4,000 in savings stays roughly $4,000 after inflation. Your $20,000 invested becomes $349,000 at 10% returns. The traditional 6-month fund becomes $52,000 over the same period. You have $301,000 more wealth using the three-tier system. Now, the obvious objection. What if I lose my job during a market crash and have to sell my investments at a loss? Let's run that scenario. It's 2008. The market crashes 50%. You lose your job. You have $4,000 in cash savings. You need another $16,000 to cover 6 months of expenses. You sell $16,000 worth of investments, but they're down 50%, so you actually have to sell $32,000 worth of pre-crash value to get $16,000 in cash. You just locked in a massive loss, right? Wrong. Here's what actually happens. You use your 1-month cash buffer immediately. You put 2 months on the credit card while you job search aggressively. You find a new job within 3 months because you're desperate. You only had to sell $4,000 in investments to cover 1 month while the credit card bought you time. You sold at a 50% loss, so you liquidated $8,000 pre-crash value. You lost $4,000 to the crash, but your remaining $12,000 in investments recovers and grows to $209,000 over the next 30 years. Compare that to having all $20,000 in savings earning nothing. Even with the $4,000 crash loss, you're still massively ahead. And that's the absolute worst-case scenario. Market crashes coinciding with job loss in a field where you can't find work for 6 months. The statistical probability of this is less than 2%. You're optimizing your entire financial strategy for a 2% probability event while sacrificing $200,000 plus in wealth building. That's insane. Here's the framework for implementing the three-tier system. First, build Tier 1. Get $3,000 to $5,000 in a high-yield savings account as fast as possible. This takes priority over everything except high-interest debt. Once you have this, you have real emergency protection. Second, establish Tier 2. Get a credit card with at least a $5,000 limit. Use it sparingly, pay it off every month, build your credit. This is your emergency access tool, not a spending tool. Third, redirect everything that would have gone into a massive emergency fund into Tier 3. Open a taxable brokerage account at Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. Invest in a total market index fund. Every dollar beyond your 1-month cash buffer goes here. This money is still accessible if you need it, but it's working for you instead of sitting idle. Fourth, never touch Tier 3 unless you've exhausted Tier 1 and Tier 2. This is not for new TVs or vacations. This is your invested safety net for true emergencies only. Fifth, as your income grows, keep Tier 1 at 1 month of expenses. Don't increase it to 6 months. Put all the extra into Tier 3. The only exception is if you're within 2 years of a major goal, like buying a house. Then you might temporarily increase cash savings for the down payment, but immediately after, drop back to 1 month and invest the rest. Let me show you what this looks like over a real career. You're 25, making $50,000 per year. You need $3,000 per month in expenses. You build a $3,000 emergency fund in 6 months. Then you start investing $500 per month into Tier 3. By 30, you've got $3,000 in savings and $38,000 invested. By 40, you've got $3,500 in savings, adjusted for lifestyle inflation, and $165,000 invested. By 50, you've got $4,000 in savings and $438,000 invested. By 65, you've got $5,000 in savings and $1.6 million invested. Now compare that to someone following the 6-month rule. They spend until age 30 building an $18,000 emergency fund. Then they start investing $500 per month. By 65, they have $18,000 in savings and $1.1 million invested. Same person, same income, same contributions. The three-tier person has $400,000 more wealth because they started investing earlier and kept less in cash. Here's what I need you to understand. The 6-month emergency fund rule was created in an era before credit cards, before electronic fund transfers, before you could liquidate investments in 30 seconds from your phone. It made sense when accessing money took weeks and investment liquidity was limited. That world doesn't exist anymore. You can move money instantly. You can access credit immediately. You don't need 6 months in cash. What you need is smart emergency planning that balances protection with growth. 1 month in cash protects against immediate emergencies. Credit access protects against short-term disruption. Invested funds protect against extended crisis while building wealth. This is the modern emergency strategy that actually works in 2026. You have a choice right now. Keep following advice from 1970 and watch your wealth grow slowly while inflation eats your emergency fund. Or adopt the 3-tier system. Protect yourself smartly and build serious wealth with the money you're currently wasting in savings. The 6-month rule isn't safe. It's expensive. It's costing you a house, a comfortable retirement, financial freedom. If this video changed how you think about emergency funds, smash that like button and subscribe to John Money Rules for more content that challenges conventional wisdom and actually builds wealth. The 6-month emergency fund rule could be costing you $300,000. Stop following it.